So unfortunately, you can get access to the list for free now. You used to have to pay. However, there's a process of getting it, and I guess you have to be an investor, and we didn't like go through the process of getting it, unfortunately. But the Carbon Underground Coal 100 covers 98% of reported proven and probable coal reserves owned by publicly listed companies. The Carbon Underground Oil and Gas 100 covers 98% of reported proven gas reserves and 97 of proven oil reserves held by publicly listed companies. The Carbon Underground Tar Sands 20 ranks the publicly listed owners of oil sands by the potential carbon emissions embedded in their oil sands reserves.
All right, so the trend of fossil fuels. The fossil fuel industry is very volatile. For decades, they were profitable, but right now they are not. They've lost a lot of money. You can see the specifics here. So you can tell like it's a dying industry. They, merged together, and mergers are normally seen as a sign of weakness. So Exxon had been discussing to merge with Chevron, just trying to put together the strength that they still have. And last week, the global ratings agency S&P announced it was placing ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and Total on credit watch, which means they're in danger of a downgrade because of significant challenges they face. So these institutions that are investing in them will lose money, and this is no longer profitable. So there's a big argument here to make about divestment.
Sorry, and then a quote, Dave Elms, professor of practice and head of the Global Energy Research Network at Warwick Business School, reflected on the losses by stating that this week's huge losses by Shell, BP, and Exxon Mobil reflects the challenges oil and gas companies face. They are skating on ever-thinning ice as the effects of climate change combine with other events like the COVID-19 pandemic. The future does not look any more profitable or bright for big oil. Shell said it might need to cut production as significant uncertainties would have a negative impact on demand for oil and gas. As the renewable revolution gathers momentum, the demand for oil will only decline. And then another quote is, I believe this is from CNN. Exxon is the best known company in the fossil fuel industry at the time when investors would prefer to bet on solar, wind energy, and also Tesla.
And here's an example of a school that has divested, is University of California, and we're going to talk about some other colleges and what they've done so far. So the university system announced it had divested completely from fossil fuels, becoming the largest in the country to do so. It represents a trend that is hopefully going to come in investing in renewable energy. They sold more than $1 billion in fossil fuel assets from its pension, endowment, and working capital pools, and invested that back into clean energy projects. So this is very significant, as it's a very big college system, and it calls on other colleges to also divest. So why is it necessary? Why is it necessary on like a college level? Is there all these colleges love to talk about, the sustainability offices, their green initiatives, their, one solar panel on a building. But if they're still invested in fossil fuels, then they're not really doing all that they can.
Okay, so like we've already discussed, the University of California system has already divested from, or is in the process of divesting from fossil fuels. So I know you guys have all heard of Harvard. It was probably like it was my dream school at once. It's probably been your dream school at once too, and hopefully you still want to go there. However, and we all know that Harvard University has a big endowment. So Harvard University has not divested from fossil fuels yet. Hopefully they will in the near future. The administration has been a bit resistant when it comes to divesting from fossil fuels. $5.6 million was invested in companies that produce or own reserves of oil, natural gas, and coal, and large electric utilities powered by natural gas and coal. The overall endowment was responsible for annual emissions of 11 million tons of carbon dioxide, roughly equivalent to the annual emissions from Delaware, which that stat is quite crazy. The fact that Harvard, not the biggest school, has maybe a couple thousand students, is investing in companies that produce the same amount of emissions as a state in the US is quite ridiculous. So now we can talk about Carleton, the school that Maddie and I attend. So we're both a part of Divest Carleton, and the goal of Divest Carleton is to start the divestment campaign aims to lessen the political influence of fossil fuel companies by targeting the industry's reputation to make it less enticing source of campaign funds. Divestment aims to change the way the public, governments, and investors view fossil fuel companies in order to create a political climate where large-scale action on climate change is feasible. So far, what have Maddie and I done? As a freshman, we've attended meetings and we protested in front of the president's house. In 2015, a letter was sent to faculty members, and so far, 69 faculty members support divestment. However, that letter hasn't been quite active, and so our goal right now is to send that letter out again and to get more faculty members and perhaps students to sign on to that letter. And that's also another direct action that you guys can utilize when it comes to your divestment campaign.
So as of right now, our president is leaving. He did not come out of his house when we protested. He has not, so far, he's not said anything about divestment. The school has not been transparent when it comes to where our money is going. So we're hoping that our next president is open to divestment. But we're not giving up. That's the point of these campaigns, is to not give up until we have a real answer. Okay, so two companies that Carleton is invested in is Anadarko and Noble, who have financially supported the election of political candidates who deny climate change. So that's another thing to think about when schools are investing in these big companies. These companies tend to fund political campaigns. So of course, if it's a fossil fuel company, it's gonna invest in campaigns that don't believe in climate change. They spent over $1.4 million to elect members of Congress, and these representatives and senators have extremely low ratings on climate change issues. So it's something to think about, that this is also interconnected, in that this money is going into the people that represent us in the government.
Okay, so the next question that we're asking you is, what do you guys believe institutions can reinvest in? Or what do you guys want institutions to reinvest in? You guys can put it in the chat or unmute too.
If anyone else wants to talk a little more about it, you're welcome to unmute.
Perfect, thank you. So it looks like a response from Maya is solar energy, Ava, wind power, and then Bodhi said Harvard. Sorry. So when it comes to reinvesting back, when a company divests and they have that money, they need to reinvest into something. We hope for these institutions, like you guys have stated, in renewable energy, and consider, like we've defined beforehand, ESGs. And we want them to prioritize people over profits, because these companies are exploiting individuals, and they're perpetuating the climate crisis, which in turn leads to environmental injustice, which affects, especially disproportionately affects low-income minorities a lot. And like, we don't have a universal healthcare system, so like climate change has been linked to a lot of health problems, which in turns leads to higher health costs for these individuals that don't necessarily have the means to pay these high bills. So therefore, we really want to reinvest into companies that care about the people and put an emphasis on the well-being of the planet and individuals, and won't exploit individuals and the planet too. And then the next question we have is, what actions would you guys take to encourage your institutions to divest from fossil fuels?
I think one important thing is just like informing them like what divesting is and like why they should divest.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think another thing that is important is like getting a lot of support from other people. So kind of like what you guys do in the Sunrise Hub, just like having sort of a coalition of people.
Yes, coalition building is super important.
Perfect. Thank you guys for your responses. Yeah, I think that, especially here at Carleton, I don't think a lot of people know what it means to divest. So definitely putting emphasis on education, and having them like really understand the concept, and then like also spreading the word too. And so the next slide is, direct action is necessary. So here are examples from other colleges. Here, I'll show this video.
Include Brooksville Jr., class of 1982, John Perry, class of 1966, Larry Mifflin, class of 1973, John Reese, class of 1990, and Ken Wills, class of 1961.
Perfect. So that's
Fewer than 10 minutes into a Harvard Institute of Politics event featuring University President Lawrence Bacow on Thursday evening, roughly 30 protesters from two prominent Harvard divestment campaigns interrupted the speakers with signs and chants. Protesters from Divest Harvard and the Harvard Prison Divestment Campaign have demanded Harvard divest its nearly $40 billion endowment from companies related to the fossil fuel industry and the prison system. While divestment movements are no stranger to Harvard's campus, the two groups have ramped up their efforts in recent months.
perfect. Okay, so I just showed you like brief clips of like examples of direct actions that students have utilized in order to encourage their institutions to divest from fossil fuels. And then, like Maddie and I said beforehand, we just attended a protest this past Saturday in front of our president's house in order to pressure him into divesting from fossil fuels. Like Maddie stated beforehand, he didn't come out, but he was in the house, and his wife saw his protest, and his wife told him what we were saying outside. So he knew that we were out there and he knows what we were saying.
So what you can do, I'd say as high schoolers, research your school, research your high school, your whether it's a public school system or a private school, do some research. And if you're applying to colleges, also research your colleges and give your resources when you can. Donate to campus initiatives, mutual aid to Indigenous organizations, because it's important to recognize that this college is on stolen land. So we are profiting off of stolen land and simultaneously worsening it with climate change. And we understand that not everyone has resources to donate. So you can also just educate yourself, give time to helping educating others. And then we wanted to ask you guys if you had any other questions, and then if we had time, maybe talk about how we can include Indigenous peoples in our activism.
I was kind of wondering, like, what other challenges you've had when, like, trying to get colleges to divest, and like how you overcome those.
I think it's the notion that like the fossil fuel industry is still profitable. But like we've said beforehand, they're losing a lot of money. And eventually this institution and other institutions that are still invested in fossil fuels, they will lose money because that's how investment works. So it's kind of sad that like they put profit over people, because that's their main objective, is to garner a profit. And like maybe they are now, but like won't be sustainable in the long run. And also the fact that these companies are perpetuating the climate crisis, and it's affecting, like I said before, and disproportionately low income minorities, that like they're also contributing to the problem because they're investing in these institutions.
Like, about how many students at Carleton are part of the divestment movement?
I would say in the Slack, we have about 10 people, but also Carleton's is a very small school. But at the protest, I believe we had about 30 people. And like Divest Carleton is also kind of a part of Sunrise. So we have people a part of Sunrise that help out with Divest Carleton.
I was going to say, including Indigenous people in our activism, a lot of colleges that were created on Indigenous land, stolen land, and have had bad past with Indigenous people should start like creating programs and implementing programs that help Indigenous people in the area get into their college. I know a lot of colleges that I have been like in info sessions with have initiatives to like give back to the Indigenous community and like help them get the experience of the college that like was once their land. And I think that should become normalized within a lot of colleges.
Yes, for sure. That's a really good point to make. Just kind of helping when we can, and encouraging and pressuring our colleges to help.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I believe that is time too.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace and Maddie. That was really awesome and super, super interesting. I'll just say, I know we're at time because we're about to start our legislative meetings next. But if you're not in the Slack, you can join with this link in the chat here and continue the conversation that way. And I'll also post, we do have a short survey. This is for the whole event, but I'll just share the link now so you can save that and fill it out at the end of the day, whenever after your last session that you join. Great. And thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much for coming.
Woo. Awesome job, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Bye.